the noise that prevails out there everywhere. And the tragedy is that people either do not understand or do not have the courage to shine the light of truth on nonsense.
Okay, so Nelson, we're going to dive into part 2 of Becoming Your Own Banker, where you share wisdom about the human problems. And I wanted to start with Willie Sutton's law. Sutton's law is formulated thusly as wherever wealth is accumulated, someone will try to steal it.
First labor-saving device, don't produce anything, steal what somebody else produced. That's the hallmark of mankind since day one.
And we've seen comparisons again, where we talked earlier about, becoming your own banker being compared to an investment, or becoming your own banker being compared to perhaps someone who has money inside of a tax qualified plan, like a 401k or in Canada.
That's what they've had drilled into their minds. Governments want to make a prisoner out of you. Now, the easiest way to do that is to give you something. See, in my book, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, chapter 10 is Out of Egypt and On to Babylon, from slavery to slavery. And I'm just starting there with Abraham and just 3 generations. They're down in Egypt as a result of a government handout. Pharaoh was government. Most everybody knows the story of Joseph getting sold into slavery by his brothers and all the intrigue that went on within the family there, so forth. Ended up in prison down there as a result of being Potiphar's servant or whatever, and his wife had the hots for him, and he was accused of rape, got thrown into prison. He's in prison with a couple of other guys. One was the baker, I guess he was. Another one was with the food taster, I believe, before Pharaoh ate it, whatever. Anyway, they'd done something wrong and got thrown into prison, and they had a dream down there while they were in prison. Joseph interpreted their dream. He said 3 days, one of the guys was going to get back restored to his position in life. The other one was going to get his head cut off. Well, he told the one who was restored to his position, tell Pharaoh that I'm here unjustly. Get me out of here. I shouldn't be here. That's ridiculous. Well, he forgot all about it. Pharaoh has that dream. Suddenly the servant says, hey, I know a guy that can interpret your dream. Old Joe down there in prison. He interpreted that dream. 7 years of fat, 7 years of lean. All right. The strange thing is that I've heard people in the insurance business say, that was the first example of insurance. They didn't get the characters in the play straight. That's the first experience of government meddling in people's lives and trying to control their lives is what it amounted to. All right, so here comes the famine big time, and here comes Joseph's 10 brothers. Benjamin had to stay home with Papa because Papa couldn't stand Benjamin going. He was brother of Joseph. Well, he gave them all kind of grief there to get their perspective adjusted, but then they got reunited and so forth, and Pharaoh discovers this is Joseph's family. Go back home and get Papa. Come on down. Don't bring anything. I'm going to give you best part of Egypt, Goshen. Well, if you ever start taking a government handout, you will be a slave. It will poison your mind. You will think that your blessings come from government. They want to make... So that's the hallmark of Satan. He makes things look good at first, but it turns right and bites you in the butt every time. But it's too late by that time. People never learn. All right, during the 7 years of fat, Pharaoh confiscated 20% of the produce of the land. There is no evidence he paid for it. He stole it. They ran out of... He sold back to them that which he stole. They ran out of money. They mortgaged their cattle. They ran out of cattle. And then they mortgaged themselves and ended up being slaves for 430 years. Well, that's really early. That's only 3 generations of the story of the lineage of Abraham. Well, to me, that tells me that don't ever take a resource from government because I know what they're up to. All right, so along comes in our present day, the IRS, and in your country, Canada.
Revenue Canada.
RevCan, yeah, all right. They take from you, but then they give you an exception to their, we put it this way. I have asked time and time again at seminars that I do, has anyone that you know ever read the IRS code? I met one guy that said he did. He's got to be lying or desperate for something to do. I do know that the first 9 pages is income. The next 1,100 pages, exceptions to the code. So all you got to do is read just 3 exceptions and it will tell you. We own everything, the IRS. We own everything. And we're going to grant you these exceptions. And people stand there and take it. Honestly. Why? If people rebel, how can they put everybody in prison? Somebody's got to be the prison keeper. Can't we think this thing through? But they want to run your lives. And so they think that everything that comes along has to be tax qualified plan of some kind. And CPAs are taught this explicitly. Yeah. And that's unbelievable. And they spent all kind of money learning how to be a CPA to come up with this nonsense. I don't understand. And so they think that everything that comes along, the government can take it over. Well, life insurance, shucks, DeSoto points out is well over 200 years old. The IRS code's only been around since 1913. Life insurance is not a function of the IRS code nor Rev Canada.
I've also heard you say when you're explaining that wherever wealth is accumulated, someone will try to steal it. You used a great analogy of the camel and the tent.
Yeah, once the camel gets his nose under the tent there, it's just a matter of time till he gets totally under the tent there. But, letting him get in the first place. See, again, we've talked about the noise that prevails out there everywhere. And the tragedy is that people either do not understand or do not have the courage to shine the light of truth on nonsense. And so back there, that criminal FDR, okay, we were introduced to the idea of Social Security by the Germans. Bismarck, we're talking about 1890. He said the whole idea was to get the old guys out of the workforce to make room for the young guys, because in his mind, there's only so many jobs to go around. His imagination was very limited. Bill Gates and Sam Walton would boggle his mind. So he comes up with this Social Security scheme. He set age 70 as retirement age for German males in 1890, when life expectancy was less than 50. Odds are that he would never collect. 1916 comes along and 1916 comes along. We're right in the middle of World War I. Bismarck is dead. They reduced retirement age for German males to age 65. That's why FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, got age 65 for our Social Security in 1937. Now, life expectancy for American males at that time was 61. Now, what is it? 78. And we're still talking about age 65? Good grief, how stupid. Anybody can tell you that can't possibly work. Well, do y'all know who Neil Bortz was or is? BWORTZ. He was the original talk show host. We're talking about 35 years ago. He started the whole talk show business, whatever. He ended up being a talk show host in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, I used to enjoy listening to him. He made lots of sense. The show consisted of Neil, of course. He had a sidekick, Royal Marshall, a black guy. Marshall was in his late 20s or so, somewhere along in there. I liked what he had to say. He was a good guy. Now, the producer of the show was Belinda, a lady. So there's the 3 characters. Okay, I conjured up this scenario based on what we've talked about in the last few minutes that no one had the courage to repeat. So are you ready for the scenario? 3 guys were born the same day in the USA. One was Caucasian, one was Hispanic, one was black. They all had similar jobs during their life. Therefore, all paid maximum into the Social Security con game. They call it contributions, but no, the word is confiscation. There's a difference between the two. But you see, governments don't distinguish the difference. They keep the darkness out there. They do not let anybody know what really is happening. All right, so they all achieve retirement age 65. They all drew their first check. But would you believe it? The next month, the black guy died. Do you know it's a statistical fact that blacks do not live as long as Caucasians and Hispanics? And did you know that those Japanese guys outlive us white guys almost 10 years?
Yes.
And do you know that you can pass all the laws you want to, you can't do a thing about that? Tell me, what happened to all the money the black guy paid into social? The next week, his widow dies. I'm sorry, the next month, rather, his widow dies. What happened to all the money that black guy paid into Social Security? Well, the truth is, first of all, it never existed. In the USA, when you make a check for Social Security, you do not make it to Social Security. It is made to the U.S. Treasury. That's what it's made to. The money is spent. Worthless IOUs are put in a file in a cave in West Virginia, say we're going to collect it from the generations that follow us. There's no way. It's all a lie. All right. The next month, the Hispanic guy dies. The month after that, his widow died. What happened to all the money Pedro paid in? Same. But I was so proud of Neil Bortz. Now, I emailed this to him 3 times over a period of several months. And by the grace of God, I was listening when he put it on the air. He didn't use my name. That's not done. But I could easily recognize it with no trouble at all. He added another element to it I hadn't thought about. He turned to Royal Marshall, his black compadre, said, Royal, do you know, under the system we've got going on, the money you are paying into Social Security is making the program last a little bit longer for the benefit of that little blue-haired white lady. Royal went ballistic, and rightly so. I can't think of anything more unfair. But yet, you see, that is the product of what comes out of government thinking. It is nothing more than man trying to play God in the pagan sense of the word, but I don't find many economists that will acknowledge that. But DeSoto does.
You also use an explanation that describes the biggest thief in the world, and you talk about going to a shopping mall. On page 29, let's go to a shopping mall or some such place where there are lots of people to witness what I'm about to do to you. At this point, I will pull out a gun and place it against your head and direct you to give me the contents of your wallet, or I will blow your brains out.
Right.
I can predict with certainty that those who saw this act will describe it as theft.
Yeah.
And they'll call for your punishment. But if you will allow me to gather that same crowd for about an hour before you show up, and let me talk to them about how we are going to divide the contents of your wallet.
Distribute among ourselves. They say that's democracy in action. Oh boy. See, democracy is a crazy idea. It can't ever work. That always falls apart. But yet we worship that sort of thing.
What is the best way to solve the problem?
Contract freely with other people. That is it. The law of contracts prevails. When you destroy the law of contracts, you've destroyed the law, you've destroyed civilization.
And with life insurance companies having been around in the USA for more than 200 years.
Yes, it's older than our country.
And having been around longer than 170 years in Canada, the key here, I think, is that it's not a government-sponsored idea at all.
But yet people think, can't the government take this over? Well, again, if you get lots of people doing this, how they can put everybody in jail? It's impossible. That's why the idea that Carlos has come up with is so extremely important. That we've got to get this down at the you and me level for a large number of people. And if we can achieve 10% people understanding this, it becomes viral. History has proven that. But we got to get a critical mass. But it doesn't have to be everybody doing it, and then we get this done. No, it's done one by one. That's a discovery process by you, to me, those that are in your sphere of influence. And that will grow naturally. Once this is adequately explained, see, this is enlightenment. Jesus Christ said, I'm the light of the world. Light overcomes darkness, always. There are no exceptions. And see, here's that dumb idea that old FDR got firmly implanted in people's minds. When they started out the idea of Social Security, it was originally supposed to be the, quote, employer pays all. And he says, oh no, let's make it contributory. The employer pays half and the employee pays half. That way, now let them try to do away with my idea of Social Security. They think it's theirs as a result. When the truth is, and DeSoto proves this conclusively, so does Mises, that employees pay everything. What actually is being said is that here our government dictates that you haven't got sense enough to put all this into a program that would solve for your retirement and so forth. So we got to make sure that we do it confiscating half of the input for this thing. But, on the books of the employer, this is how much he's got to pay out totally. Now, I was trying to explain this to one of my very best clients in the hardware business. She was the bookkeeper for the business and so forth. And I was explaining that employees pay everything. And she said, oh, no, we pay half of it. Now, how do you get through that mindset? How do you get her to see things straight? She has that firmly fixed in her mind because her CPA told her that. When I was in the business, early part of it at least, well, practically all of it, time and time again, getting affiliated with a new client, make a proposal, show him the projection as to what possibly happened. Invariably, let me run this by my CPA first. And quite often my response was, why don't you run it by your garbage man? He knows more about it.